Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop, and this week we're going to be taking this and turning it into a new dust hood for my Mitre saw station. Okay, let's get building. So the first stage was to disassemble my old Mitre saw hood, which as you can see came across quite well. Then I did some really accurate measuring. That's just me writing it down because I had to raise a step there to level it off for the hood to go on, which I hadn't originally planned to do, but by the end I was actually quite glad I did because it worked out quite nicely. So all of this project has come from bits of wood that I've got lying around, or the actual old unit that the Mitre saw was on, which is where all the plywood came from. With the price of wood at the moment, I certainly couldn't afford to buy any. So I measured it up and then ran it through the table saw, and again this is the sort of stand that it's going to go on at the end, and I just cut some little sort of braces, like almost like cross braces really, for the sort of shelf to rest on, and then I just put them on. I decided to go for a thicker piece of plywood in the middle. You can just see it there because the other two I think are 12mm bits and that's an 18mm bit, but I just wanted to have it absolutely strong. So I'm marking it either side so I can pre-drill. Obviously being plywood, it does have a tendency to split, and I was very short on plywood, so I didn't want that to happen. So when I drilled it out, I just then got some double-sided sticky tape just to help me keep the actual sort of wings or parts of the shelf in place exactly where I needed them to be while I just put the screws in. Actually worked really nicely, this. It's just really cheap 3M double-sided tape, but it worked nicely. So when they were all fixed in, I offered it up to the hole. I was a bit worried that, you know, something had gone wrong on the measurements because it was quite complicated, but thankfully it fitted absolutely perfectly. That gap on the left I'm not worried about because the unit is going to come across and cover that anyway. So off camera I did exactly the same for the other side, just a tiny little bit. Then I got the planks, and these are the planks that were my old Mitre saw station. The planks are plywood, so I ran them through, and these are going to form the two sides. This wood was good, but obviously the way it had been in the unit before, it was very bowed at the top, so I actually corrected that later on when I put the sort of struts in, which you'll see me do in a minute, and I actually managed to get it to level out. But once I cut it, I offered it up just to make 100% sure that it was exactly in the right place, it was the right depth, and as you can see I'm going to run sort of the back behind the Mitre saw, but in front of that white panel, which is where all my electrics are contained. So I just got a screw and hooked it in to keep it straight, and I can't remember or not if I've included it, but I got a spirit level, and just made sure it was okay. It was slightly off, so I just wedged a couple of little screws down it, sort of as shims really, to make sure, but nice and sturdy, and it was a really good fit. And as you can see, there's the other side. Now, next thing I did was measure the gap in order to make the sort of struts at the top, the two struts at the top and then the struts at the side. These are the offcuts that you just saw of the bigger sizes of plywood that are forming the side. So I made these two and I had enough, and these were the sort of braces for the top because obviously they were bigger. And then I've got this old piece of wood. I mean, it's lovely wood, and I know what you'll be thinking, oh, it's a bit of a waste of wood to do that. But actually, you can see it's very cupped. It's virtually impossible to use it on anything else. So I cut it down to strips, 3 strips, and I use those as the sort of back braces at the back of the unit. So when I did that, it was time for pocket holes. Do love a good bit of pocket hole video in the Garage Workshop video. So I did quite a lot of pocket holes here. You can see how cupped the wood is there. It's just laying on the bench. And when all that was done, I just hooked it all together. So I started with one sort of top brace, then this piece of wood that you can see there, I just fixed it on to sort of keep everything together and keep everything straight. I then went to the other side, you can see just attaching it there, and it sort of just kept the wood in line enough that I could fix it down with pocket hole screws. I just used 25mm ones. I then offered it up, and I was very pleased to see it fitted exactly. It was a perfect fit when I'd shifted the unit, and literally you can see it only went a couple of centimeters, an inch forward, but it did fit exactly how I wanted it to. The next thing to do was the top. This is not the best way to cut a piece of wood. It was the only flat surface I had, so please don't follow that. And then I ran it through the table saw, and then I had that annoying sticker on the top that was really annoying me. I then hooked in these two top bits to the actual unit. You can see me there taking it off. So the top is on, and to be honest, I didn't really fuss about how it looked like, so it's going to be facing the roof of the garage workshop anyway. With that done, I then ran the board through the table saw. So it was quite tricky. As you can see, it kept getting sort of caught, but I got it through in the end. And when I'd actually got it through, I offered it up and it fitted perfectly, and then I needed to cut the sort of two off bits that you can see there. I then got out my my little brad nailer and nailed it all up, and then I taped it before finally offering it up. At this point I was a bit concerned. I mean, this unit is very heavy. You can probably see how much I'm struggling. I mean, compared to how it was before, it was very heavy this time. So I just took my time. I angled it in place to exactly where I wanted it to be. Luckily for me, and I've just mosaicked out something no one ever wants to see, but luckily for me, it fitted an absolute treat. It was an absolute perfect fit. And with that all done, I just then added a couple of little screws, because the bit at the top, there was just a little bit of a gap, and I didn't like it. So I just added a couple of little screws just to sort of close the gap more than anything else. I mean, the gap is still there a bit, but to be honest, I can live with it. It's not the end of the world, and it looks really, really nice. Very pleased. So, fellow woodworkers, I've come to the end of my Mitre saw hood, and I have to say I'm really impressed with how it's turned out. It's very sturdy, as you can see, and it's gone exactly as I wanted it to in my mind. I've got plenty of clearance around my Mitre saw, and it also fits in very well with these two extension arms that I've got, the sort of wings from my Mitre saw. It fits perfectly. All of the electronics behind it, the plugs and everything, are still accessible. I can still get to them, turn them on and off, so that's no problem. And I think it's going to catch a lot of dust, a huge amount. Now, there are a couple of things I might consider in the future. I know some people like to put a sort of inner bit on it, and the only thing that worries me about is this. My moving back and forward, and unfortunately I smashed or broke the connector for my dust extraction when I was doing the project, which was a bit of a pain, so I have to fix that. But I might at some point come up, but I have seen a few on YouTube where people have just had like literally like a metal curtain that hangs down, like a chain fence like you used to have on doorways in the 1970s in the UK. So I might consider something along those lines. But the good thing is I've still got some clearance on the top. As I said, it's nice and sturdy. The only things I'm not 100% happy on, this piece of wood on the top doesn't seem to have seated very well. I put a screw in the top there because it was really lifted up, and I'm don't quite sure what that is. It might just be the strength of the screws that I've used underneath, but if I'd have gone any further, those screws would have gone through the surface and be proud. As it is, some of them have literally raised the surface up, but I have got some space now to put some storage on. I could even potentially put a drawer unit or a shelf on the top there, so I've got lots of options going forward. But I set out to build a nice, strong, sturdy hood for my Mitre saw, and I've certainly done that. So for me, the project has been a really big success. The only other thing I should have pointed out is just this bit here where I've used a few different bits of hardwood, but to be honest with you, with wood prices the way they are, I wanted to just use the scraps and the things I had lying around the garage workshop, and I just about had enough to do it. And as you saw in the video, I just taped the back up just to stop any dust getting through. So overall, really, really pleased. If this is your first time at the Garage Workshop, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to hit a like and leave me a comment. And if you're not a subscriber, please can I ask you to do that. If you're a regular follower, thank you so much for your continued support. I hope you enjoyed this video, and also don't forget to like and comment. Next week I've got a little bit of a special video coming up if I get a delivery in time, and I'm going back to my age-old problem of routing. So have a fantastic week, and I'll catch you on next week's edition of the Garage Workshop. Take care, fellow woodworkers.